Hi, my name is Tony Chan. I'm reporting for TelecomTV. Today with me, we're going to talk to Nuage Networks. I'm here with Charles Furlan, who is the Vice President of Business Development for Nuage. Charles, thank you very much
You're
for
very
coming
welcome.
here. And we're going to talk about SDN and the data center. So how do you think SDN is impacting data center infrastructure right now?
It is impacting that quite a bit. I mean, we used to look at a networking vendor selection based on functionality that were specific to a vendor and say, well, I'll select this equipment or this equipment based on the feature set. Well, now that we're stripping the control plane, data plane type of functionality, we're looking at the networking vendor to offer a highly reliable, efficient, and fast transport layer. And looking at technologies like Nuage Networks, for example, with a rich software functionality that goes on top of that environment. And in many ways, the way customers are making decisions on their data center infrastructure is impacted by this, and having not to commit to a specific hardware vendor lock-in and having the diversity of the software and perhaps even more functionality.
Okay. So, what kind of new technologies is being, rolled out in this architecture? Because we talked a lot about functionality and software, but are there new technologies that you can?
Well, there's a lot of new technology in, I would say networking has become very sexy in the last couple of years, completely transforming itself, and we're looking at the data center and the WAN sort of merging together, where we now have the same functionality that we can use in the data center, the same policies that we want to roll out across the data center, reaching to the branch office of customers. This is something that is very appealing for customers, as well as looking into an hybrid cloud model, which is also extremely important to our customers. And these new technology allow us to, or allow our customers actually to effectively have virtual machines or have workloads on their premise, and in case of disaster recovery, in case of extra capacity, allow them to burst into a public cloud environment. So this is something that wasn't very possible, or not easily possible, not too long ago.
Okay. So what are some of the benefits that these technologies bring to operators, specifically around efficiency and obviously cost saving?
Right. Well, if you make a parallel with the server environment, where we used to have an operating system residing on one bare metal server, and that server was perhaps used at 10% capacity. When we introduced the hypervisor concept, we actually allow multiple operating system to share the same bare metal server, and we drove the utilization quite significantly higher, right? So it's about the same thing with networking. We're able to get a lot more utilization out of the networking infrastructure. So that helps reduce the amount of equipment that we need to purchase, so it helps on the CapEx. And quite importantly, I'll give the example of Nuage Networks, where we actually have a policy-driven type of model where you define once your configuration and you're able to deploy that many times. So from an operational aspect, the OpEx savings are extremely important. You do one configuration, you create a template, and you use it as often as you need.
Okay. And so how is these technologies and these, you mentioned templates,
yes,
factoring into the design and the operation of next generation data centers?
Well, as I said earlier, we used to look at a specific hardware and say, this functionality I'll be using, or this functionality I'll be asking my vendor to produce it, right? Now we open that concept and we allow customers, for example, to have direct access to the APIs, to the programmable interfaces of our systems. And there's a lot of things that we can do that in the past, when you're looking at a black box, we couldn't simply address that. So it changes a lot how the data centers are being built. They're more software driven instead of hardware driven. So if I talk about software defined networking, I think software should be in capital, bold, underline. It's about the software. Yes, there's networking, but it's really how we can enhance and extend the life of the existing infrastructure by doing all the new all the modern networking technology in the software without having to be burdened with the existing infrastructure.
Okay. There's been a lot of marketing hype around applications and how application-centric the network becomes when you can adapt dynamically with software to these. So what's Nuage doing in this area in terms of helping applications perform better?
Well, Nuage has an architecture called a VSP, and part of that architecture, there's a component that a very slick GUI interface I must comment on. It's very nicely done, that basically allow non-networking people to define the type of resources they need. What type of network, what are the policies, who's allowed to talk to who in this, in a very graphical, very intuitive way, non-networking way, none about spanning tree and routing protocol and all of these things. And basically what Nuage allows us to do is a very intuitive interface to create what the application requires as far as security, quality of service, deployment model, and push this down to the infrastructure regardless of the physical hardware, right? So we do all of this in software without having to rely on any type of specific hardware functionality.
So how does Nuage VSP solutions help your customers?
Well, it helps them a lot especially if they're on the journey to deploy private cloud, public cloud, or embracing an hybrid cloud. Any type of cloud environment, what our customers are actually doing is automating the deployment of resources, managing this, and allowing them to move easily. And this is tremendously done on the server platform, on the storage platform, and what Nuage helps our customers is actually make an abstraction layer on the network so that using the same orchestrating tool that they use for their cloud environment, we allow them to as easily deploy the networking attribute, and perhaps even more important, Nuage technology allows the migration, seamless migration of the resources across multiple data centers.
So how is Nuage Networks VSP different from other SDN solutions?
It is. It's a good question. Well, in many ways, it is an overlay technology. So a network virtualization, we basically have an overlay type of technology with all the benefit that it brings on the programmability. But I think what is very unique about Nuage is that there is a very tight correlation with the underlay, the physical environment. Nuage background is from Alcatel-Lucent, so we have a very core and solid routing platform that we're able to leverage in our deployment to also pair with other routing elements in the data center or in the WAN, and actually make our overlay aware of the actual underlay via this standard routing protocol. And that I think is pretty unique because it allows us to optimize the path, the data path. It also allows us to avoid what is known in industry as tromboning effect, where we optimize the data path to say all the resources that are moving to one location. We'll update all the routing tables to steer traffic in that direction and avoid the back and forth. That is significant bandwidth usage saving.
Right. Okay. So obviously there's different requirements in terms of how the network behaves between a data center and a WAN. So for Nuage, is your solution targeted at particular environments, or does it apply to all?
It actually applies to all now. It started in the data center. Some looked at the WAN as different controller, but I would say the Nuage environment and the Alcatel-Lucent overall solution sort of combined the data center and the WAN environment into one integrated solution. So basically the SDN control plane function is not separate product. It's not separately done. It's the same controller that we use to manage resources. Either that is a virtual switch on a physical server in the data center, or that might be something that we deploy in a branch office on a custom off-the-shelf router.
Okay, Charles, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
This is Tony Chan signing off for TelecomTV.